So next up we will do the sleeve. I have 2 layers of paper, and I just make sure that my sleeve is going to fit on there with all the space that I need for seam allowances. So when I trued this sleeve, I added 1.25 inch seam allowance already. But everywhere else on this sleeve, I'm going to need a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So the bottom is taken care of already, but I need a 1/2 inch seam allowance everywhere else. Okay, now I need a ruler. So this side is straight until I get to the hem. And I marked in pencil a little border on my brown paper to make sure that I didn't fall off the edge anywhere. So I'm going to use a black pen to draw my seam allowance so that it's easy for me to tell the difference between the guide marks that I made and the seam allowance line where I want to cut. So, that line didn't draw. Rude. So I got to do some pivoting for my dart seam allowance. And then I'll just extend the edge of the dot paper all the way to the edge of my seam allowance on the undersleeve. And then for curves, I like a smaller ruler. So I'm just putting the 1/2 inch mark of the ruler against my dot paper. And then on the edge of the ruler, that's a 1/2 inch away from my dot paper, I'm tracing the edge of the ruler that is directly across from the 1/2 inch line on my ruler that's following the dot paper. And as soon as this 1/2 inch mark line on the ruler starts to deviate, like it does right here, away from the dot paper, I stop tracing and then I pivot my ruler. And I could do this with dots instead of dashes. But my preferred method, just personal preference, is to do lines. And there's lots of ways to do something. And you just have to do what works best for you and achieves accuracy. So it's not always what's most comfortable, but it's what you can achieve the best accuracy with. And the more you practice, the more comfortable it gets, and the faster and the more efficient you get. But in the beginning, almost everything new that's worth learning is uncomfortable. And like in the weirdest ways, you know? Sometimes you learn something and it makes you feel like you're losing it a little bit. And you get frustrated and emotional. But stick with it. Give it a chance. I'm not saying stick with everything that makes you feel like you're losing it and emotional, but give it a chance. Personally, math literally made me lose my mind and have like crazy meltdowns for decades. And you know, I just found that in a lot of things I wanted to do, I couldn't avoid it. And eventually I figured out my systems, you know, but it really took a long time. And at first I thought, I don't need math. I'll find something else to do. I'll find someone else to do it. But I don't know, I guess I didn't give myself a chance. Or not immediately anyway. But eventually, me and my brain, we worked it out. So now I'm just transferring my notches through the edge of my seam allowance. This is my hem notch for my original bottom of my sleeve before I added my seam allowance. And then I'll just make sure that my 2 layers are stacked such that I won't miss anything on the bottom layer. Oh, I forgot my dart right here. And once you have it lined up well, So these are the notches for my dart. That's a notch for my hem allowance. Hem allowance. Notch. Center sleeve notch. Back sleeve notch. And then vertical seam allowances. So I'll just extend the edge of the dot paper. Extend the edge of the dot paper. Oh, that one I don't really need to do actually. And then notch. And it might also be helpful to notch elbow level. So when I sew this dart, I'll know where it's supposed to hit over here on this side of the sleeve. So I'll just grab my ruler and extend my line. And then I just want to check this seam allowance measurement. Okay, looks like something weird happened here. She was talking about math and brains and learning and didn't transfer the proper curve shape of this side of the undersleeve, but she is remedying it now. Okay, so little notch there. It's extra, but I'm the one who has to sew it, so I like it. And then earlier my tack rolled off my table onto the floor behind it. So let me pause you and go search for my tack. I need my thumbtack right now. Well, that was a fruitful search. I found my thumbtack and some other things I had been looking for. So I'm going to use my thumbtack to poke the top of my grain line at bicep level, my grain line at elbow level, and my grain line at wrist level. And then I have these tiny little, almost imperceptible little pinholes that I made. And it can very easily place my ruler against those pinholes, and that enables me to transfer my grain line to the other side of this sleeve. And then I'll draw my arrowheads. And then I can, well, first I have to put like the labels that are like important to everybody, not just me. You know, my imaginary factory people. So my style number, HLL845. My style name, Vogue 4045. My piece name, sleeve, if she can spell. Size 8. I need 2 sleeves. I'm going to cut it out of self fabric. self gets circled. What else do I need? My name, the class, and what else? The date. The form, and the ref number. So I know what pattern I copied this from. And then I can do things, if it helps me, I can do things like write front on the front sleeve, which has a single notch, and I can write back on the back sleeve, which has a double notch. And if I want to, I can go ahead and draw my biceps level. And I can draw my elbow level. I don't have to, but if it helps you, you can. And my wrist level, or I don't know, it's not my wrist level anymore, it's just the hem, after which I added the hem allowance. And another thing that's like crazy important is, okay, I'm looking for my all, there it is. Okay. So super important. That's my vanishing point. I am going to sew to there, but I'm not going to punch it because I now have seam allowance. Instead, I'm going to punch my punch hole that is a 1/2 inch inside my vanishing point. I'm still going to sew the full dart length, but in order to conceal this hole, I need it to be a half an inch away from my vanishing point. And I can circle that in red on both pieces, because this is 2 pieces. So if I unstaple them, I need to be able to see that red circle on both pieces. Okay, so sleeve is done.